Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hire Women Mastermind. I'm Shira Litzar, happy to be joined by Vern Schellinger and Elke Thompson. We are here to answer your job search questions. So good to see everybody's shiny faces on this Friday morning. So who would like to kick us off with a question? In.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. It's good to see, you all. I haven't joined the last few weeks because the schedule has been busy, but have been up and down. My particular question is, I'm in a situation where uh, I interviewed for one position and my candidacy, I'm one of the finalists. I have it's actually another final interview with that organization again later today. And then another organization, I went through the final stage and I'm now waiting to hear. But that second organization was responsive because they knew I was actively interviewing. And so they really scheduled my interviews one after the other. So I finished all of that. So I think next week will be, I'll be hearing some decision where from both of those organizations, whether I get it or progress. How do I encourage the second organization, which is more my preferred organization, to how do I communicate that? Because they were so good at scheduling interviews one after the other. But how do I gently tell the HR? They knew, but to say, hey, I appreciate your willingness to arrange all of this. I would appreciate, or I would like to know when you would be making a final decision. I guess I really just need to know it by next week.
So actually, you're already saying it. Like literally, you're already doing the right steps. Like literally, like there isn't any more like that. You are doing it. So like, let me back up a skosh just for everybody's sake, because the concept that you're talking about, I think, is worth just backing up and explaining in at a high level. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes it happens where you will be pending actively with, let's just say, a couple of opportunities, maybe three opportunities, something like that. And they're all kind of popcorning at the same time, right? That does happen, where you're kind of, progressing, right? And typically there is, maybe one of those opportunities that you're more interested in. So absolutely, and do what is done. Absolutely let the employer know that they are your first choice, what's going on, that you are actively pending with another opportunity. Of course, you don't have to name names, right? But just to say, pending with another opportunity, here is what's going on with that other opportunity. And you would tell them, look, I've just finished a second level interview. Looks like they're scheduling something for next week, blah, blah, blah. Hey, employer of choice, what's your timing? What's going on? How can we expedite this process? Blah, blah, blah. Now, here's the deal. One of two things is going to happen when you say that to them. If, let's just call this employer B to use N's actual situation here. If employer B, your employer of choice, if you are their candidate of choice, right, and you're like the top candidate, they're going to let you know at that point. Literally, that's when they're going to say like, oh, okay, in. They'll get a little like panic, like, thank you for letting me know. They'll just be like, okay, what are we gonna do? And wait, when is that interview? And can we do that? And they will just start to expedite. And that's exactly what happened to In. That shows that that's what we call the recruiting buying signs. Okay, buying signs. They really want to move forward. But the other option, other scenario, I should say, let's say, you're not their candidate of choice. They're going to have a different reaction. And they're going to say something like, oh, and thank you so much for letting us know. We can't hold you back. You got to do what you got to do, right? We can't, we have a process. I'm not sure when it's going to wrap up, right? It's a whole different tone. That lets you know where you stand. That lets you know that actually you're not the candidate of choice. And if employer A really is the one, meaning if you are comfortable with that, then you may want to pursue that. But as far as the process itself, be transparent. Trust me, the employer, the recruiter, the HR person, they want to know because they want to help the hiring manager secure their candidate of choice. And if you are that person, they don't want to lose you. Like literally, they will do whatever they can not to lose you. Now, Sometimes it's their extenuating circumstances. They can't move it forward. I don't know, maybe when the hiring manager's on vacation, maybe they're at the beginning of the process. You know, you're at the end of the process with employer A, you're at the beginning of process with employer B. They literally cannot move it up in your time frame. You're going to have a decision to make. Okay, then
That's right.
and we just don't know, like the timing of that stuff doesn't always work out, in sync. But the point is you're doing the right thing. Just be yourself. Just all you got to do, however you phrase it, it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
As
Yep.
long as you are professionally saying,
Yes.
getting over here, here is the timing for them. What is the timing for you? Can we sync this up? Is there anything we can do to, is there anything we can do to expedite this? Right?
Yes.
Right. So that's what I would say. I mean, is there anything else that would be, does that make sense?
Yeah. And Shira, well, if you remember, we had this conversation with Jamie Below probably a year ago. And literally Jamie said, well, my first company hasn't talked to me in quite a while. And, they're really my first company. Shira gave the same advice. She called them. They called her in the next day.
Right.
Right. Because she was their first choice.
That's right. And they don't know because they're just doing their thing. They're busy. Recruiting is kind of the last thing on their mind. It's first thing on your mind. It's the last thing on their mind. And so they're just doing their thing. And all of a sudden you've lit a fire under them. And they go, oh, wait, we don't want to lose her. Because employers erroneously think the candidates are just sort of waiting by the phone. I'm not kidding. Like they do that. Recruiters do that all the time. Oh yeah, when I call them, they'll be ready. Oh, no. You've got stuff going on, but you've got to let them know if you need to light a fire. Right. Alki, I want to get any opinions you have, and then Anuja, we'll grab your question.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from what you said was the transparency. And as a candidate, you definitely have a right to have that discussion. Not every company or recruiter is the same. So I would slide in there with that conversation that Shira is mentioning that you should have is she described two scenarios. There's a middle scenario that happens sometimes too, where to what she just said, they may actually want you and like you, but they may be stuck in all kinds of decision process. And with your nudge, if they don't come back the next day and say, hey, let's do the offer the next day, whatever they're doing, if you're their choice, they're going to drop some things and at least start working on it. The other thing I would say too is if you have, I don't know if you're working directly, whoever your point of contact is, recruiter or whoever that is, that's your person too, that you can have that type of a conversation with. If it's HR or the recruiter, a lot of times recruiter, we're minded in the way of, I know I am. One of the first things I ask candidates in my screen is either at the beginning or at the end, what other action do you have going on? Just so I can let them know in the beginning, I'm going to be transparent with you. You stay transparent with me. And that way at the end, it's not even brand new. But to Shira's point, a lot of times they're just thinking, oh, we got this, she's going to need us. We don't need her as much as she needs us. So I encourage you to have that conversation. And definitely don't form it like, hey, you better make a decision because I got another opportunity over here, because you never know what can happen. Even your number one opportunity, right? Something weird could happen with that. So as you have that conversation, keep it neutral, but do that nudge that Shira said, and it pushes the ball into their court.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Alki, about the decision making, because they could be stuck, right? They might have, it's you and a few other people, and they're just sort of waiting and they're figuring out everything out. But this literally could be the push for the HR recruiter to say, we're about to lose in. How does that make you feel, guys? Are we ready to lose her? Like, oh, wait, oh, and then and sometimes it'll actually prompt them to rethink your candidacy, to say, oh, what do we think? We actually have to move this along and start to make a decision. So all in all, it's good.
And one other quick thing as a follow up to what Elke said about you never know what's going to happen. I did come in second in a search one time in my career. And the person who came in first and accepted the position found out the next day her husband was being transferred to Tennessee or something. And so she accepted the position, she declined the position, and then they offered it to me. So sometimes it's a crazy world.
That's right.
Yeah.
You just never know. I just had finished a CEO search, and it was literally you could not have been more neck and neck with these two candidates. And it came down to this tiny little aspect of the person A's candidacy. But you know what? Contract negotiation that could have fallen through. And so, we would have had to go to the second person. I had to keep the second person informed, like, hey, we're still making a decision here, because you just never know. You never know. So just keep them informed and let them know. Is that helpful, Lynn? And hopefully it's helpful for everybody as you're going through this. Okay, Anusha.
It's a good problem to have, I was going to say too. So congrats on that problem. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. So I have the opposite problem. I have had 3 calls. One was with the recruiter and 2 with HR, all for different positions, all in my wheelhouse, meet, what they're looking for. And I've written to all 3 of them because they, had mentioned that they would get back to me, I guess last week to some extent. One that I did a call with a few days ago said, I'll get back to you later today or tomorrow at the latest. And that was 3 days ago. So I'm trying to keep the faith. I'm trying to stay, upbeat, but I'm a little, I'm obviously feeling a little dejected, but sure, to kind of what you said a few minutes ago, right? That recruiting is it's not their priority. Yes, it's our priority, but I don't know if I should send another follow-up, but one call was the first week in September, one was 2 weeks ago, and then one was earlier this week.
Yeah, at this point, I wouldn't. I mean, you can if you haven't. Let's make this up. Okay, let's say they said, hey, we're going to be following up with you in a few days, and then a few days passes and nothing happens. If it's like that, if they say a few days, follow up in a week, right? But again, it's just their priorities really, really are different. I want you to remember when all of you were in, I know some of you might be gainfully employed right now and some not, but just remember when you were the last time you were in a full-time role. And let's just say you were the hiring manager. I mean, I think many people on this call have been hiring managers. What was your life like? I want you to remember that. Most job seekers quickly forget what it was like to be a hiring manager, to be involved in the interview process. You don't have to be in HR to know what that's like. You're busy. You're doing stuff, right? And then that HR person is kind of prompting you and pushing you and prodding you, like, yeah, I'll get to those resumes. Like, oh yeah, fine, I got to schedule the interview. And then you show up to the interview and you barely read the resume 5 minutes before. It just happens that way. So you got to remember, I always say, pack your patience. Got to pack your patience. And you just never know. And usually it could be a month later and stuff has happened. Someone's gone on vacation, someone's out, someone's this, someone's that. Hey, there's 3 new candidates that came in the mix that you have no idea about. Extended the process, extended the interview process. They had all good intention of getting back to you in the 2-3 days, but then it just doesn't happen. So you're welcome to follow up. But even if you follow up, it's not necessarily that's going to push them along any faster. Keep that in mind. Your following up is more for you to kind of scratch that itch than it is to necessarily do anything on their side. They're going to follow up with you when they follow up with you. If you want to do one little quick note saying, hey, just reiterating my interest, curious about the timing, fine. But unless it's a situation like what we have within, where there's an actual legitimate, hey, there's a fire here because I'm pending with something else, and you can prod them along. So I really need to know because something else is cooking. That's different. But if it's just, I just want to touch base, they'll send a carrier pigeon to your home if they need to track you down. Okay. Truly. So your job is to always say, plant seeds. You're a farmer. You got a field, plant tons of seeds. You never know which ones are going to pop. The wind, the birds, the rain are going to take some of them, but it's like a sales funnel, right? Kelly knows this because he's in sales. So it's a sales funnel. You got to have a big old pipeline, and then a few things might, pop at the end. Anusha, you just keep your eyes forward. Have those things in the background. Don't emotionally invest in it, overly emotionally invest in it. Just say, oh, it's an opportunity. Great. They'll come back to me when they get back to me. I'm on to the next thing. Does that make sense? It's emotionally, you got to keep your eyes forward, lean forward. Don't think of it as a windshield, not a rearview mirror.
Yeah, no, which is what I've been doing. I'm continuing to, applying for new opportunities, but just sort of I put in chat that in one case, the hiring manager said, I'll definitely get back to you today or tomorrow at the latest. I don't like to leave people hanging. I like to let them know, one way or the other. And
life happens.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, and yes, I'm just kind of keeping, putting one foot in front of the other. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And I do also have a hard stop because I'm just supposed to do a call with someone, potential position, but I wanted to join just to ask that question. So
Yeah,
thank you.
sure. Alki or Vern, any other thoughts on that?
No, other than, it's a frustrating process because in the job search process, you're doing everything you can to move this thing along. And if you were in a job, you could make decisions, you could change things, you could go faster, you could go slower, and you'd have some control over that. And what happens to the job seeker in this situation is you feel you have no control, right? And there's not much you can do about it.
Right.
And so that's why Shira says you just got to keep looking forward.
By the way,
Yeah.
we consultants go through the same thing, right? We have a prospect, fill out a proposal or have a prospecting conversation, and then crickets. And they're all interested in us. They're like, and then nothing, or 5 weeks later, or it's the same thing, right? Somebody's making the decision to hire you, us, whomever, and they got their timeline. Same thing with you. If you were to go hire a vendor, you need your tree cut down, you need your lawn mowed, you need your plumbing, whatever. Right? You're going to take the time that you need to make your decision, and life's going to happen. And the vendor's got to have a pipeline of other potential clients, right? It's all the same kind of stuff. So just want to keep us all in the right, frame of mind. Okay.
And I'll piggyback on what both of them said, and to state what Vern said in my own way. It's brutal. It's brutal. I could use a lot of other words, to be honest. I don't love it. I'm a recruiter. To be honest, I don't love the way the process works, which is why I and a lot of us work different. But not everybody's like us. I've been an HR recruiter. I've also done it independently. I've also worked with agencies. So on the agency side and independent, we're white glove. We get right back to you because we have a search like Shira does. We get back to you because we got to move this thing on a certain timeline. In HR, that thing goes all kinds of ways, and departments are different. So I try to be a different recruiter because I get it. I also remember when I switched careers, it was brutal, the waiting period trying to get a job. So as Shira said, you sow seeds. It's easy for us to say too, but you sow seeds. You try to take your mind off it. If anything, one thing that I've told people, and I do this myself too, if you have a legitimate question while you're waiting, maybe you're like, hey, I met that guy and I did have a question for him. You can send that back and just ask a simple question. Sometimes in our busy days as a recruiter, that question makes me go, I'm working on all my other 46 recruitments. That's right, I got to get back to her. They did send me an email this morning. Her email prompted me, but it's not all the emails though. Hey, what's happening? Just calling to get an update. That one is okay, but recruiters sometimes will move that along. But a question, hey, you mentioned benefits, or the hiring manager said this position might be X. I just wanted to ask, this. So sometimes for your mental health as well, you're learning something, but it's a subtle way of making contact in the meantime where you're also learning. But it's really a hurry up and wait situation.
It's a great point, Alki, because you're right. I mean, the 46 assignments is not necessarily an exaggeration. A corporate recruiter very well might have that, and a recruiter internally. HR person, not necessarily, but they're busy with 1,000 other things, and they've got 1,000 candidates. They've got all these people that they need to juggle. You're one of many, many, many people.
So then just a quick follow-up. So since I've already sent a follow-up to all three, I sent a thank you message and, showed my interest, and then followed up, a week later. So don't do anything is what I'm hearing you say.
Hey, at this point, I wouldn't,
Okay, perfect.
Keep it light. There's no real reason necessarily to just, move forward, and a couple weeks from now, something like that, fine. But, not in a few days, because there are a few days actually. Everything takes 4 times longer than we think it will. We all have this idea, oh, sure, a day or two. And then those days fly by. They got 50,000 meetings going on, and then they've forgotten, that they said that they would get back to you. So just pack your patience.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, Deborah.
Yeah. So one of the things of the job search that's not my favorite is writing cover letters. And I have one to work on later today this weekend. So I would just love a review about cover letter 101, like how to write it, kind of tips, or like, did I sit down to do it? And what I try to do sometimes, rather than to type in a formal letter in Word, is I just kind of write it out more like informally, like this is what's on my mind and heart. But then I come back with cover letters and I'm like, it's something about a job. It's one of the pieces of job searching that I can struggle with, and I feel like it can take a lot of time. So I just wanted to have like cover letter 101.
Cover letter 101
Yeah. I'm
or
not
two
past
or
that
201.
class.
Yeah.
I'm still in 101. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up a sample. This is a real cover letter from one of my clients. I've redacted the name and such, but I want to show you the concept here. So, so this cover letter, and there's lots of ways to do these things, but this is a concept, all right? So in this particular cover letter, she, we're calling her Jane, was kind of mentioning, okay, look, I'm going to open this up, okay, with some sort of personal connection. Now this may not apply to everybody, because you may or may not be connected to the mission of the organization, but hopefully there's something overarching that's connecting you to them. So in this particular case, she was connecting herself to the mission, okay? And then in her second paragraph, she was talking about where the organization is, because the organization mentioned that in the job announcement. They said, hey, we're growing, we're this, we're that. And so she sort of mentioned there in that second paragraph, look, I'm aligning with where this role is going, where the organization is going. And then in the third paragraph, talk more specifically about her overarching skills, like my interest in advancing your mission comes from my entrepreneurial approach, and like referenced the kind of skills that they would need overarchingly, but then specifically here, okay? So following companies that I believe would greatly enhance my success in this role. And so she pulled the different competencies. Now, normally they don't sound like this, management communication. Normally it's going to be like event planning or project leadership or change management or board relations, or usually it's like a 2-word phrase, but either way, you pull the competency from the job announcement and you find those competencies, especially in the qualification section. That's really what they're harping on. Secondarily, I would go into the responsibility section, but then a little description, okay, of generally speaking. Let's say you're talking about your event planning skills, right? Like you can just sort of give a nice overview to highlight, broadly speaking, what those skills are. Now, it's a little different than your resume, because your resume hopefully are specific accomplishment stories. This is a little bit more of an overview, right? So I've planned these many events and, these attendees and or I've raised revenue in general. I've been, I've raised up to $1 million in revenue, whatever it is. But you have these competencies, you have a little overview of a highlight of that competency, and then you wrap it up. Okay. So it's a very straightforward process. Do you have to do 3 paragraphs? No, I would do a couple, but you want to have one that's, could be aligned with mission, one that's your interest level and sort of your overarching competencies, and then the more specific things. And that's a really easy way to do it. I know that Ty, who used to be on this call, his version of this section, some people do this as a chart, a table actually, to say one column is your requirements, and then the other table is my qualifications. That's another easy way to do it, where it's just the your requirements is you literally pull the phrase from the requirements section. Basically, they're looking for, 10 years of experience doing blah, blah, blah. In the other column, my qualifications, I've done da, 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 da. That's a fine way to do it. This is another way, whatever works for you. Does that help? Does that help, Deborah? We can't hear you. I'm not sure why.
Oh, I was muted. Yeah, that was very helpful.
Yeah.
And is it okay then, like, to do it like, because it looks like that's 1 page, so it's like a 1-page well-written letter, okay, or does it need to be longer?
No, 1 page is actually what you want. I mean,
Okay.
if you have to go to a second page a little bit, you can, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's 1 page, simple, quick, and easy. All you're doing is saying, I'm aligning with the job or the mission. I'm aligned with the role, my interest in the role, boom, 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 and that's it. 1 page done. Alki?
Okay.
Deborah, is it required for a specific job, or you're just wanting to do one?
There's a job that it's specific that I think I'm going to be applying for, that I talked to the company.
Did they ask for a cover letter?
They asked
Yes,
for it.
yes.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if they don't ask for one, it's not a bad idea to do one. It's a nice touch, especially when you can express your interest and enthusiasm. You know, there are some organizations where they're very mission driven or very industry focused, I should say. And if you have an interest and or background in that sector, really good to highlight. I'll give you a quick example. Many years ago, I did some searches for the Nuclear Energy Institute, and I was doing searches for their communications department. Well, anyway, so we were looking for some very specific kinds of people, as media relations, this and that. But I remember distinctly there were a few candidates who, in their cover letter, really highlighted the fact that either they had a background in nuclear energy or they were interested in nuclear energy for what, environmental reasons, whatever. And those cover letters jumped off the page to me because it really showed mission alignment. It's not that the other candidates weren't qualified to do the media relations work. It's just that these folks were like extra into the mission background, right? So it's what I call some of you have heard me talk about this. It's what I call the difference between your lane and your community. Your lane is your profession, your community is the industry, mission, or sector that you serve. So again, your lane is your profession, your community is the industry, mission, or sector. Employers they ideally want both. They want you to be able to do the job, and they also want you to hopefully come from the industry, mission, or sector, right? Or at least align with it in some way, because it helps them feel safe. Like, you get us, you understand our issues, that kind of thing. So this could be a really nice place to highlight your community connection. Whether it's your background or whether it's your interest, do it here, and especially if you've done a little research on the industry or research on the company and you've noticed that they are growing, they had a press release and they, I don't know, whatever, they've done something. Hey, I've noticed you just expanded. I've noticed you've just something, and you can highlight that and customize this cover letter to that, like really customize it. And somebody happens to read it. By the way, when I say happen to read it, cover letters are actually only read 2% of the time. But they are read 2% of the time. Alki said 1%. Yeah, they are read 1 or 2% of the time. When they're read, they're really read. Let me say that again. When they're read, they're really read, because the employer, that recruiter, really is into cover letters. But you're never going to know that. 98, 99% of the time, they're not going to read it. So here's the point, though. If you're going to write a cover letter, make sure that it stands alone, meaning your resume has to stand on its own 2 feet. Never, I got to say this, guys, I cannot emphasize this to you enough. Never include something on a cover letter that should actually be included on your resume. Don't think, oh, well, I didn't mention this on my resume, I'll just put it in the cover letter. Oh, no, because most of the time they're not going to see it. If you have industry experience, if you have certain skills, you make sure that resume stands on its own 2 feet. Make sure it's all included. Your cover letter is just the frosting on the cake. It's not the cake. It's pretty, it's nice, tastes good, but it's just the frosting. Okay, your cake has got to stand alone. The thing about cover letters, and I know we're all old enough to remember this, okay, is that cover letters literally back in the day, 30 years ago, right? It covered the resume. It was lick the envelope, put it in, right? Remember that? And so it literally was the first thing that they saw. They did a quick scan and then they turned the page. Okay. They don't do that anymore. It's 2 separate documents. And for those of you who are thinking, well, maybe I should make it 1 document, don't do that. Just have 2 separate documents, your resume and your cover letter. If they want to see it, they'll see it. Make sure it's written really well. No typos. No, none, 0, zilch. Read it backwards, forwards, proof it, up, down, back. Make sure there's no typos. Resume, cover letter, make sure it's clean. But do write it thoughtfully, because you never know that 1%, 2% of the time that they actually will read it. Is that helpful?
I will second what Shira said. In all of my HR career, for every job I recruited for, maybe not the administrative assistant, but I required a cover letter, and I was definitely one of the 1 or 2% that read the cover letters. I wanted to see what the person was going to say. I wanted to make sure there was no typos, grammar, could this person write lucidly? And did I get a sense that they really took the time and effort to present themselves in the cover letter that, again, aligned with the resume and really showed interest in the job?
Mm-hmm. Dave?
Hi, good morning. This is not related so much to the search, but we've talked about this before. Today's my last day. I'm having fun applying for unemployment. And I've done a lot of reading on it. And I know that for me, I'm probably going to be applying online and maybe talking to a recruiter. I don't expect to be talking to a lot of people at the companies, at least initially. And yet, from what I'm reading, the requirement for Virginia is that you have to put a person's name and a phone number, maybe an address. I've got companies that are local. I've got a phone number, but do I really need a name? What if they give me the first name only? I mean,
No, you
so
don't. You don't.
how
You
do,
could just put applied through online platform.
oh,
Yeah,
I can do that. Okay.
yeah, you don't have to like, yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Well,
You know, some
that's helpful.
places, you know, it's hard to find an address or it's hard to find a phone number, but just put whatever you do find through your Google searches. But typically, you know, on these online platforms or LinkedIn, there isn't a person that I'm contacting.
Well, actually, I found that there is a way to get the address. I actually found a list of high-tech companies. There's a publication called Washington Technology, and and I got a list. And then you can go to the real yellow pages and you can get the local phone number and everything. Okay, but that's fine. Okay, the other question I have is that actually I finally got my summary better on LinkedIn, and I got recruiters that contacted me. Unfortunately, it was all for the same job, which I think has gone away. But I wanted to know, since I know these recruiting companies now, I know some people in them kind of, what can I do to improve the relationship with these recruiting companies? I know their name. I can link in maybe with a recruiter, but I do know the company I think that they are also recruiting for. I mean, the name of the recruiter firm.
So first of all, it is a third party, right? Third party recruiter.
Yeah, it's somebody who's just trying to fill one spot, but their company as a whole is kind of a recruiting company, as far as I know.
Sure.
It's not for a private firm that's looking for someone in particular.
Right. It's a third party. And so I'm
Yes, that's
guessing they
right.
have a technology practice.
Right. Oh, I'm assuming they may have more than one practice. I don't know, but at least for what I've seen, they have technology practice. Yes.
So I want to make more clear on what your specific ask is. What are you trying to do?
What I'm trying to do is I want to be visible to them in the future. Okay, either maybe to these individuals or maybe to other people that might be recruiting, but maybe they're not the same person, but they're recruiting for similar jobs within that same recruiting firm.
Right.
Is
You
there-
know, Alki, I'd
is there a
love
way
your
to do that?
take on this. I don't think there's too much you can do on your side of things. I mean, other than look, keep tabs of their website and keep seeing, because most recruiting firms post their jobs on their website, and to see, right, anytime you're actually qualified, you can just simply apply, because there's probably different recruiters recruiting on different things. So because recruiters are search focused, less candidate focused, well, mostly search focused. Like, they got a job, they got to fill it. Now, there are some firms that have a different process where they are candidate focused only in the sense that they'll build a relationship with a number of candidates that are high quality, right? High caliber, the kind of candidates that they could very likely place. And so they might have a sort of a proactive sort of relationship with you, interview you, blah, 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 and then sort of shop you around, right, to some of their clients and say, hey, we got this guy named Dave and he's da 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 da. And they go to specific clients and say, hey, client, are you interested? That's if they are, mostly if they're in a career vertical, like in your case, technology. They place technology people up and down the food chain. They might do that, but that's unusual. Most of the time is the employer says, hey, recruiter, please find a person for this, and they're out there scouting. So as far as what you can do, I mean, you could just, ping them if there's you could actually, what you can do is be a referral source. That's always a good thing. So if you ever see that they have a job that's in your world, right? Maybe it's not right for you, but it's right for a colleague, refer a colleague to them. That's always a goodwill kind of a thing. Alki, any other thoughts you have?
And all that is great too. Are you asking what more can you get out of that relationship with that recruiter / their company? Is that what you're asking?
That's basically the question. Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so from both sides of the coin, one, from me, being an HR recruiter, working with agencies who call us all the time, and from me being on the agency side. So one thing that happens is if I find you, I own you, you're my relationship. my partners, if they see you, and if it's a company that has a system, they're going to see you attached to me. If they have a job open, you may look good to them. I may not be recruiting for that job, but they all work different. Sometimes they work on splits where that somebody may see you and contact me and say, hey, I've got an opening, you've got a candidate, let's do a deal and let's split it. That's one thing you can do. Or, I mean, that's one thing they'll do. But you can also ask your recruiter, you know, hey, we've had a talk. I know you're working on my behalf. To Shira's point, they're not going to get back to you unless they have a position that fits you. So they may check on you from time to time, but unless something happens, you're just in our pocket. What you could do is contact that recruiter and ask them, you know, hey, I don't know if your colleagues are working on any searches that are similar, but I'm also open to, like, if you have a little opening for something else that this one, because as Shira said, sometimes we're laser focused on a vertical or a specific type of search. If you open them up, you know, by letting them know, hey, if any of your colleagues, you know, have anything that's similar, you know, don't hesitate to contact me about that either. That may get them thinking, because we want to close the search. To Shira's point, some of them don't work on splits and they're like, no, I'm not going to share you with anyone. Some companies, there is no ownership. And, you know, I'll use Robert Half, for example. You know, you may work with one recruiter in Alexandria, but there may be a recruiter in Texas who has a remote role that may fit you, and they may not talk to each other at all. So sometimes it doesn't hurt, but I would start with the recruiter who you connected with first and ask them, is it okay if I see what you guys do? I see you have some other recruiters in other locations. Is it okay if I ping them or build relationships or contact or network with them as well? And they'll let you know how they work.
That's helpful. But at a minimum, I think it's reasonable to at least try to link in with them. Some of them have actually said they want to link in with me. And some of them,
yes.
I don't know whether they're interested or not, but I think it's worth just saying.
Dave, you brought up a great point. Okay, let's just broaden this concept. I'm sorry, we haven't talked about this in a long time. Connect with recruiters on LinkedIn. Like, for real, proactively. 99% of the recruiters out there want to have you in their LinkedIn database. If you are in their industry, if you are in their sector, if you were in the professional vertical, whatever it is, you reach out proactively. You don't have to wait for them to ping you. You can just do a search in LinkedIn in the search bar and just type in recruiter. Now, you don't just go to any recruiter, right? Try to find the ones that actually do what you do. In the tech world, it's very easy because literally their titles are typically technical recruiter. That's super easy. There are other verticals where and you wouldn't know them all, okay? And I don't even know them all, but where if you just put recruiter and then the profession or the sector that you're in, sometimes something will come up. So you put a recruiter and then marketing, or a recruiter, commercial real estate, or recruiter nonprofit. You have to do some searching, but if you can find recruiters that special sales, like for Kelly, right? There are definitely recruiters for a lot of professions now. There's not a recruiter for everybody or for every profession or every sector. Why? Because frankly, it's very expensive for an employer to work with a recruiter. So for example, I would highly, highly doubt that there are recruiters for social workers. Social workers don't get paid very much, right? And so the employers that hire them, you know, aren't likely going to pay a fee to get a social worker. Does that make sense? So, but they will, and a lot of other things, a marketer, commercial real estate sector, financial services, things like that. So I can't tell you if there is or is not one for your profession or your sector, but you can try. And if you do ever find ones that are in your field, proactively just say, hi, Susie, you know, I'm a customer service manager. I'm a commercial real estate, blah, blah, blah. Would love to stay abreast of future searches. Done. 9 times out of 10, they will accept your invitation, because we're typically open networkers. We want a lot of candidates in our database so that we can, you know, find the right people very quickly.
I have done that. I've been kind of selective, and some have and some haven't. So, but that's fine. I appreciate that. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, questions? Success stories. Anything happened this week that was notable? Something good that happened? Something you learned? Anything you can share as a tip, a piece of advice? Gina, I don't know. I feel like you
Just
got
a lot of
something to say.
networking, just a
Yeah.
lot of cold call networking and just getting out. I definitely was able to this week balance the waiting game with the okay, let me reach out to other people. So looking forward to that. So that feels
Networking is
great.
huge. There's no
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah.
And especially networking with people who do what you do. Some of the best networking you could ever do, because if those folks are in your network, when they are being recruited or they hear about opportunities, if the job's not right for them, it could be right for you. And so to the extent that you can really get out there, and the best networking is the people who do what you do, but also that same person, if they know you, like you, and trust you. So if you have a relationship with them and they're in your circle, it's a beautiful thing, because they want to help you and they're very capable of helping you. Not that you can't network with everybody else. I mean, look, your next door neighbor could have a referral, like happens. Absolutely. Tell everybody you're looking, but especially the people. Buy in. Have a blessed weekend. The relational people and the people who do what you do are a great fit. Simone?
Good morning. So one of the things, and this is more of a background information and then a question. One of the things that I've been doing is kind of piggybacking off of what Dave said and what you just said to Gina in terms of it being kind of in your vertical. And in addition to researching and trying to connect with recruiters that are in my vertical, I research companies that are in my vertical and then find the recruiters by looking at the people section on LinkedIn. And because sometimes you can put in hashtag we're hiring or what have you. There's all types of different ways to research.
Right.
But my question is, in doing that, and I send a generic message much like what you said, hey, I know basically maybe there's nothing available at this moment, but and what my profession is a contact center senior leader. And it doesn't matter whether it's sales. I have background in sales, customer service, retention, and so forth. So I have a generic message that I craft and send. I customize it obviously to the individual, but the emphasis of it or the structure of it is pretty set. So my question is, in doing all of that, like Dave, I haven't gotten a ton of responses, but I have gotten some. And my question is, A, is that a recommended approach? Is there something different I should do? And B, what in your experience, what is the percent of time that people are going to react? In other words, am I doing well if I'm getting 10%, or is that terrible? I just would love to kind of know what the percentage is.
So go back over this again. So what exactly are you doing that you're wanting to figure out if you should be doing more of? Go back over that piece of it.
Sure. Researching companies
Yeah.
that have contact centers, because that's what I do as a profession.
Right.
And then going to the people section, go to the company and the about and all that type of thing. First I look to see if they have any jobs. Most of the time they don't.
Right.
If they do, that makes it just a little different message. But ultimately I'm going to the people tab and I'm typing in talent or recruiter or what have you and connecting with as many of them as I can.
Right.
And that leads to the question of what percent of the time, first of all, is there something different I should be doing? And then also what percent of the time is a response to be expected? Am I doing well if I'm getting 10%?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I wouldn't think of it that way. I don't even think there are any statistics of that, because it's just not something that a lot of people do. Although you should do it. That's great. So I wouldn't think, 10%, 20%. I couldn't answer that. I think I see Alki shaking his head too. But what I would say is this. So number one, keep doing that. All right. So keep going after the talent, the recruiter, the HR people. But yes, there is more that you can do. So just to kind of double back, because I know, Simone, not everybody on the call may understand the research process that you just went through. So I'll just go through it really quickly. What Simone is doing is she's using the search bar in the upper left-hand corner. She's typing in the name of the company. You hit enter, and then you hit the people button, which is in the upper left-hand corner. And that's going to bring up the people who are in your network that work at that company. So what she's also then doing is going through and saying, finding the HR person or the talent acquisition person or whatever. But yes, you can do more than that. What I would do is I would first of all go after whoever you believe would be a hiring manager for you. Now, in your case, that might be the CEO or the COO or whatever it is. Let's say you're a director of marketing type of person, right? So maybe you're going to go after the chief marketing officer. So try to figure out who might be the hiring manager. Now, remember, there is no job yet. You're just networking. You can absolutely reach out to that person, say, hi, whoever the CMO is, and you have to make it thoughtful around why you're reaching out. But you could say something about, you can mention something about their background, mention, hey, I noticed that, we're in a similar space. I've been, looking for opportunities with firms like yours because maybe you come from that firm, but you have to there has to be a natural connection. It can't just be any CMO in any company. You come from that sector, or maybe there's a certain skill set that you bring that's very unique to that particular firm. Something that would say, look, I wanted to make a connection with you. In case you could benefit from my skill set in the future, I wanted to make sure that we are in touch, something like that. And then you can reach out. Those hiring managers, you never know. You catch them at the right time and they're thinking about hiring somebody like you. They haven't posted the job yet or at all. They're like, wow, she kind of sounds interesting. And they look at your LinkedIn profile, which needs to be thoughtfully crafted. That's a whole other conversation, right? Your headline needs to really speak to your brand and your top superpowers. Your about section needs to be a story, not just a bio. Really speak to who you are, what you do, who you serve, how you serve, thoughts around, your philosophy, like really make sure that it's a thoughtfully crafted narrative. And then your experience section should not just be company title date. That description section in the experience needs to be thoughtfully crafted. I would actually transfer over the bulk of your resume into it. When you have accomplishment stories in your resume, put those accomplishment stories in the experience, because what ends up happening is your LinkedIn profile becomes an extended version of your resume. It allows the employer, whoever they are, recruiter, HR, hiring manager, to really vet you before they see your resume. It's a much more thorough look at your candidacy. So that's definitely what I would do. But like I'd say, go after. So in your case, I'm seeing operations here, right? So the COO is probably, I'm guessing, is the person who you go to the company, go to the COO and see if you can connect. Remember too, that a lot of gainfully employed people do not check their LinkedIn profile, right? They could have a connection request in there for months and not even know it. They could have an email sitting in there for months and not even know it. So that's another reason why we can't really talk about statistics, because you just don't know, right? Who's checking their email, who's checking their LinkedIn. You can try. The other thing I would do, Simone, is if you really are trying to reach out to these folks, and let's say you send a connection request, you don't hear back in a week or whatever. And you probably do this already, but just in case for everybody else, if it's a second level connection, that means there's at least one mutual connection between you. Usually LinkedIn will let you know that. I found it glitchy sometimes for whatever reason, you don't see who the mutual connection is, but usually you do. Reach out to one of those people, somebody that you know, like, and trust. So let's say Alki is my second level connection. I'm really trying to reach him. He's the CMO. And I found that, Deborah is my one of my second level. So I'm actually friendly with Deborah. Like, I actually am friendly with Deborah. So I know Deborah would help me. And so I would reach out to Deborah and say, hey, Deborah, I noticed on LinkedIn, that you are connected to Alki Thompson. And you've already tried to reach Alki, by the way, but you're just doing an extra step. Deborah, would you mind reaching out to him? Maybe via email? Email's good, because you don't have Alki's email, but Deborah does. Why does Deborah have Alki's email? Because she is first level connected and she can go to the contact info button and find his email. Would you mind reaching out to Alki via email and asking if he would mind, connecting with me? And here's why I believe we should connect and why he might be interested in somebody with my kind of background. Make it benefit to Alki. Alki's a hiring manager. Alki's the CMO. He's somebody who may, notice my phraseology, he may benefit from knowing about someone with my skill set. So this is not about you finding a job. This is about him connecting with a really great, talented person who could fulfill his business needs. Do you see the difference? It's not, I'm just got my hand out. It's, I have skills that he may benefit from. And we in the consulting world do that all the time. You know, me, Vern, Alki, if we're networking with somebody, we don't just go walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm selling a chicken. Do you want to buy a chicken? No. We find out if they want chicken, if they eat chicken or beef, right? We find out what their needs are. We're assessing them. We're like, hey, what's going on with you, Susie Cream Cheese, networking colleague of mine? What's going on? What are some of the problems that you're facing? And then if there are some of those needs that we can solve, then we'll say so. Hey, by the way, just letting you know, I actually, solve those kinds of problems. So we're speaking into their business need to see if we can offer support rather than, hey, just look at my bio. Okay. That's what I would do. Just make sure that you are letting people know, saying, can you benefit from my skill set? Happy to connect with you for the future. That's it. Is that helpful, Simone?
Sorry, I had to get myself off mute. Yes, that was. Thank you.
Alki
Yeah,
or Vern, or Dave?
Yeah,
You have a comment?
the only other thing I would add to that is, as you're making, as you're asking somebody else to connect you to somebody else, the success rate that you'll have depends a lot on the strength of the relationship.
That's right.
Strength of the relationship you have with the person, you're connecting with,
That's
and
right.
then the strength of their relationship with the person you're asking them to connect to.
That's right.
Because sometimes on LinkedIn, what can happen is, you go to LinkedIn and Shira and Vern are connected, and you ask Vern to connect you with Shira, and I don't really know Shira. She's just one of those digital connections that happen within LinkedIn.
Right.
And so I'm saying, geez, I'd like to, but I don't even really know. Now, I suppose I could reach out. But again, as Shira said, if she doesn't know me or she doesn't look at her LinkedIn very often, I mean, that goes into to just a dead end. So just be aware of that. It is, again, to the, like, know, and trust. If somebody calls me and I know them very well, and they want to be connected to somebody in my network who I know very well, those are the best types of connections. Shira knows Shira Armstrong, who is in DC. Sharon connected me with someone she worked with in HR in her career because she knew that he had a place in Naples where I live. She connected us 8 years ago, and Jeff and I have had breakfast every 3 months. Because of how well Sharon knew each one of us, she just knew that we would be a match for one another. That's when you can get to that level, those are really tremendous connections that can help you in lots of different ways.
They are. And at the same time, you just never know. Somebody might be just kind enough to reach out. And in fact, I had it happen recently where a colleague, reached out and said, this happens a lot to me. The colleague said, hey, Shira, I noticed on LinkedIn that you're connected to this, hiring manager, right? I just recently applied to that job. Would you mind putting in a good word for me? So I looked at the person, and I don't know the person. I mean, we're connected on LinkedIn, but I don't even know where we met or whatever. And so, but I did it anyway. I just was like, this is a colleague that I want to help. And I said to her, look, I don't know her. I'm happy to try. You never know. And I reached out, and the lady wrote me back and actually gave me some good information. You never know. So you can try, just manage your expectations around the relationship.
I'll keep it short because they covered it. The whole contact, Shira and Vern are contact masters, and really that's what Shira and I do. Vern does it, I'm sure, too, but as recruiters, we do that all the time. I won't say too many epiphanies. I'm a huge epiphany guy out the box. But what I really want to tell job seekers, it doesn't sound like anything they would want to hear, or they have heard often. And what Shira's, I've been on, this is my 4th call. I've heard it on every call. What she's basically saying, and what we're basically saying is, it's a shift away from the job application process to do it another way, which is the way we do it. As recruiters, I don't tell candidates to go apply for a job. They can do that by themselves. I'm trying to help them find another direct way to get in. So you asked about response rate. No, there's not like a set statistic, but what we do is, instead of 30 days to hear back from somebody after you apply for a job, I don't know what Shira's numbers are, her goal is, but I'm trying to hear something within, same day, 24 hours, 48 hours at the least, like, hey, this candidate look like somebody you want to talk to or no? And if If they do get back to me and they say yes, they've now skipped that process and they're now, how soon can you talk to them? Maybe within 24 to 48 to 72 hours. So this is reverse recruiting that I push, and we're pushing candidates, and she's pushing you all to do is, sure, apply for jobs, but as far as response rate, you're going to get much better success making these types of efforts and connections. I honestly tell people to do this way more a higher percentage than applying for jobs. Or if you do apply for jobs, you should be spending most of your time looking for these connections, connecting with people, finding out who's alive and who responds back. If it's a good connection, or if you do what they just said, hopefully you'll hear something quicker than you will waiting forever for somebody to get back to you on a
Absolutely.
job.
When you're applying on a job board, you are competing with, we can't even tell you how many people, and especially if it's a remote job. These days, your competition has now gone 10x. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. Because now that a lot of the jobs that are fully remote, employers can find people all over the country, not just regional anymore. And so it is that much more important for you to go outside the process. I mean, apply, do your normal thing, and find an internal champion, find a connection, find somebody who can get you to the hiring manager, somebody who can, as I always talk about, if you're trying to find an internal champion, go to the CEO or COO, like the number one or number two person, the hiring manager, the HR person, or the recruiter. Any of those people, or all of those people. In fact, if you can get connections to all of them, be a squeaky wheel. If they keep seeing your name over, okay, we'll talk to Simone. All right. Get as many people as you can to champion your candidacy, because otherwise you're just a name. You're just a name in the Indeed, resume file. You got to get noticed. That's really, really important. And not to mention, I've had it happen more than once, and recently on a search where a candidate applied normally, but she also wrote me privately. And I was like, wow, good for you, proactive. So you can do that if you can, I mean, I happen to put my name in the posting, but if you can find the name and email of the recruiter or the HR person or hiring manager, yeah, write them privately. You don't have to just apply online. You can write them directly. It's fine. And with a really spanky cover letter. And in this case, she also has attached writing samples. Like, she really went for it, and caught my attention. So you can do that. It's a very road less traveled. In fact, hardly anybody ever does that. So when you do it, they usually will take notice. Yeah, Dave.
I found a person on LinkedIn who knew 3 of the people that I worked with, and he was willing to connect with me. And because I was very responsive and thanked him and so forth, he actually pointed me toward a hidden job. I'm not sure if it actually took place or not. So that was really good. I've also found a guy recently. This didn't work. We went to the same university. His degrees are the reverse of mine. Basically, his bachelor's is my master's, and I was just trying to chat with him, and that didn't work. But I'm sorry to bring this up so late, but I finally found people that will recommend me, and I've been struggling with LinkedIn to figure out how I can ask them to recommend me. I know how to go to them and recommend them.
Oh, you're talking the actual recommendation section?
No, yes, because I've been struggling with it, and I've been playing with it for an hour.
I'll show you, but I just want to make sure that we're using the term recommend in the same way. You don't mean recommend verbally. You're talking about an actual
No, I mean, I have people. In fact, I wrote them a draft, and they're going to put in.
So let me show you. Yeah, that.
Yes.
So which direction? So you're saying you back up. Which one are you trying to find?
Well, it's going to be both, but I know how I can recommend Joe. But I know that Joe will recommend me, and it's supposed to be on the profile something.
Yeah, I'll show you.
I've been like beating my head against the wall.
Yeah, so you want to send a request to Joe for Joe to recommend you, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
That's exactly what I'd like to do.
We're gonna do that, right? Oops, I paused it for some reason.
It's a first level connection.
Yeah, very, very, very simple. So I'll go to Alki. So here's Alki. And yes, you're right. It has to be a first level connection. So I'm going to open him up. I'm going to ask him for a recommendation. And what I do is I go to, oh, come on. All right. I'm going to go to the more button, scroll down, request a recommendation. That's it. And then it'll say, please select your relationship, whatever it was. your position
Oh,
at the
okay.
time, whatever it was. And then you
Okay, see-
type over this. Don't just say, hi, would you write me a recommendation? First of all, you're going to reach out to Alki ahead of time. Say, hey, Alki, I'm upgrading my LinkedIn profile. Would you consider writing me a recommendation? He'll say, sure. You'll say, thanks. Hey, Alki, would you, I'm just, before I send you the invitation here, just want to highlight a few things. Would you mind, I want to make sure that you're speaking to my brand. Would you talk about this skill or that project we worked on or something. And then here, when you actually write it, it's, hi, Alki, thanks for agreeing to just as to write this recommendation, just as a reminder, would you talk about blah, 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 hit send. He'll write it, it'll come back to you. And then there'll be a little button that says, I think it says edit or something, request an edit or something. If you need him to edit it, it'll go back to him. When you have the final, then you just hit publish and it's done.
Okay, I see my problem. I think that I went to the more button and I thought it was only the other direction. I
No,
thought that
it's
I could,
both.
there's options for both on
It's
the more.
both. Yeah. So it's
Okay,
request
that's what-
recommendation
okay.
and recommend.
Okay, good, because I'm going to do a mutual. I have a colleague.
Yeah.
We are both laid off and we're both going to help. We're going to help each other. So that's
yeah.
fine. Okay, thank goodness. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
That's an easy one. All right. Deborah.
So a little follow-up on this request on LinkedIn recommendations. I'm working on one right now where I'm requesting from someone who indirectly managed me, but like as recruiters, I'm curious from you and Vernon, Alki, like when you read LinkedIn recommendations, what are things that like pop out to you or things that you really like seeing or difference makers in them? Like things I should be at, like if I'm going to ask someone to do a recommendation, or even if I'm writing one for someone, like what is it that sizzles the secret sauce that really is good to ask for or do?
To me, and I'd love to hear Alki and Vern's thoughts on this. To me, it's actually about your brand. In other words, you want that person to write about you in a way that you want to be known. I'll give you an example. So once I read somebody's recommendation and it was talking about how very detail oriented she was and blah, 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 which is totally fine. And maybe that is exactly what she wanted the world to know about her. Turns out I was looking for a strategic thinker. Okay, but you wouldn't know that. You've got to make sure that whatever is written about you is authentic and on brand. So for example, if you want to be seen as a strategic thinker, don't have people write that you're detail oriented. Does that make sense? Whatever it is, it's got to be, bless you, friend. You want to be consistent. So first of all, you have to know particularly what soft skills, because the thing with the LinkedIn recommendations is it's not really as much about the hard skills. It's not as much about the functional skills. Oh, Deborah can do blah, blah, blah. It's who you are, how you show up. So if you want to, if you're looking for people to, if you want the world to know that you're, I'm making this up, uber reliable and been detailed and thoughtful and this, I don't know, whatever it is, make sure that those are the things that they put in there because you want consistently to be seen as that person. Some other profile, some other person's recommendations may talk about the person's relationship skills and how customer focused they are and are great salesperson, great, whatever. Just make sure that it's on brand. Does that help? And Alki and Vern, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I would say, skills, skills, expertise, and to Shira's point, and they may or may not be able to do this, if they can give like a 2 or 3 line example of when you use that skill, and you had this tremendous outcome, that's pretty powerful.
That's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Alki.
It's definitely branding, and there are a lot of approaches to it. To Shira's point about consistency, which is, and then I'm going to give you another side of the coin, but to the point of consistency, I think I remember what you do, but I'm just going to use IT. So if you're a programmer and you're looking for a programming job, if you have 3 people saying best programmer we ever had in this department, yada yada yada, or he programmed, we had a big crash and some things happened, he totally reworked and built a program that solved all of our problems. If 3 people are saying that, and I use IT because a lot of times it's really specific on the one skill. If 3 people are saying that, and I'm a recruiter looking for someone like that, that's kind of like the references that some people still ask for. Hey, give me 3 references. Or it's kind of like going through the interview process, and then the internal team is all meeting saying, okay, you met with her. What did you think of her? And everybody's saying the same thing. Well, that's what it's doing before you even get that first job interview or whatever. It's saying, well, wow, this guy, I know him, and if he's saying that, or I see the company he's working for, and if 3 people are saying that, then she's a great programmer. The other thing you could do, and I've done this in the past because there's a lot of things you can do with it, but I once worked with a group, and it was a hot mess, just to be honest. And it imploded and exploded. So coming out of there and moving on to other assignments, I wanted to protect my brand. So I reached out to a couple of people just to make sure they could say, hey, no matter what anybody said about that recruiting team or that whole department, this guy took care of us. This guy took care of me. So that was my way of saying, like, hey, people are going to, if they start looking on LinkedIn, reaching out and seeing where I was last, I don't want that to get caught up in where I was before. I want, out of all of that storm, people to say, well, hey, that place was a mess, but this guy, yes, he's solid. So it's branding.
Is that helpful, Deborah?
That is, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any last minute comments before we wrap up? Okay. Great. So we'll go ahead and wrap up here. And so anybody who would like to stay on the prayer call, you are certainly welcome to. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everybody